Good evening and welcome to Boychoir Banter. My name is Jason Alexander Holmes. I'm the artistic director of the Cincinnati Boychoir. Tonight I'm joined by my esteemed panel of guest speakers. We have Bill Caldwell, we have Chancellor Way, and we have Eileen Strempel. So thank you all for being here. I'm very excited to see what we can come up with in this conversation. I'm sure it'll be something useful and great. So what is Boychoir Banter? Well, this is the third of our set of conversations, and this is a chance for us to really think about things that we don't get a chance to dive deeply into when it comes to rehearsal. So in a rehearsal, someone might stay after for a minute or so to ask me about joining or auditioning for college and what is music school like, but we wouldn't spend an entire hour talking with guests about it, right? So we've already had two other conversations. The first one was about being a professional performer, and the second one was thinking about music from the perspective of composer. Both of those were wonderful conversations with great friends of the Boychoir, and I'm sure this one will be no different. So who is it for? If you are not yet in college and you're thinking about college and you're thinking, I think I might want to be a music major, this is the conversation for you. If you're thinking, I want to major in engineering, but I don't want to stop singing, or I don't want to stop playing my instrument in college, this is the conversation for you. If you're a parent of someone who's thinking about music school, this is definitely for you. I think my mom, who I think is watching, can attest to the fact that it's not always easy because all the information is not necessarily right there to help kind of guide students through that process. So we are here for you, and we're excited. So this is an interactive conversation. So if you're watching live, you can submit your questions on YouTube. If you're not watching live, you can still submit questions to Cincinnati Boychoir, and we'll do our best to get back to you when we can. Okay, so enough of that stuff. Let's move on to our panel. So if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and about your work or experience with studying music in college. We'll start with Bill.
Well, hello everyone, and I think you starting with me because I know I'm the oldest when I look at the pictures and things here. And my background is extremely different from everyone else. I retired from 34 years of teaching at Central State University. I retired about 7 years ago, like 2013, and since then I retired from the profession of teaching in higher education. But you can't retire from the music per se. I'm still involved in music more so now than I've ever been. I don't have to deal with faculty meetings and scheduling lessons and those kinds of things. So I'm working totally professionally now. And that's the exciting part about it, because I get a chance to work with people that really want to do what they're doing. And I get a chance to be creative and just have fun. I came out of the, and Jason, you're going to have to stop me.
Okay.
I came out of all of my training and so forth. I was first introduced to music when I was in college, but I grew up in the segregated South when they did not want blacks and whites singing together, periods. So this was back like 1970s, 71 and 72. So I did not experience serious music study until I got to Stillman College in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, where the head of the music department, and he was also the choir director, he had heard me sing in church. And see, my music background was, if you go to church and you can make people shout and praise the Lord and so forth, you're a great singer. And I used to emulate Aretha Franklin singing, "Precious Lord, Take My Hand." And I got through college singing, "Precious Lord, Take My Hand," because that tradition. But the strength enough, the choir director and chair of the music department heard something else. You heard an operatic baritone. So I completed a degree in music education from Stillman College, and I studied classical. I was introduced to music theory, music composition, all of those things very late in college, where a lot of people probably were introduced to these things early on. Music literacy, as far as I'm concerned, I didn't really get into that until college. But the gift, the inspiration, the thing that moved me, the passion for it, You know, it's always been there. Even when I was like 4 and 5 years old, I was singing around the house, even to the point my parents would say, "Shut up, you're waking up everybody in the house." I just love singing. I can assure you, had you heard me sing when I was like 7 and 8 years old, I would have given Michael Jackson a run for his money, the young Michael Jackson. I was that and then some.
Right.
I had an incredible soprano voice and everything, and everybody would come to church to hear this little boy sing, you know, and I was singing and having a
Awesome.
great time.
Awesome. And I can attest to the fact, having sung with you in classical roots, you still have an incredible soprano.
Oh,
It's true. It's true. And an incredible baritone and alto and tenor and bass,
come on,
all the things.
come
So let's see. I will move on now to Chance. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I am currently a sophomore music education major at Xavier University. I spent 7 years with the boy choir up until my sophomore year. Went to St. X High School, was involved in theater and and choir there, and am now super excited to be at Xavier doing what I love.
Awesome. Awesome. And we'll finish up with Eileen before we jump into the nitty gritty of the conversation.
Well, hello, everyone. I am just so happy to be here with these just beautiful, beautiful musicians. And so I'm just honored to be here. I, like everyone else here, was spotted by someone else, and it was the Syracuse Children's Choir director, Barbara Tagg. So children's choirs just have this huge formative effect on all of us. And I am the inaugural dean of the Herb Alpert School of Music at UCLA. But I would say that's only because I've failed at my other jobs. This is literally, I think, my third career. So I first started out as an opera singer and performer. Then when I just figured out very slowly that I couldn't be living all around the world and be seeing my husband and have children at the same time, this only slowly dawned on me in my late 20s. I was like, how's this supposed to work?
Right.
So then I went back to school and finished my doctorate and became a college professor of voice, and taught other subjects as well. But and after a while of being in the faculty, then moved to the administrative side of the fence. And so I've been a college administrator for, maybe 15, 20 years. So you could say that I'm the biggest failure on here because this is now my third job. So you never know where your career in music is going to take you next.
Awesome. Well, I will say that I don't think many people think you're a failure, Eileen. I have the distinct memory of you and I were going to collaborate with the boy choir on a piece of music that we didn't get to do for several reasons.
The coronavirus reason.
Exactly,
yeah. Right.
exactly. But we, I was talking to your son who sings in the boy choir and saying, "Hey, your mom is going to do this piece," and he was like, "She'll do it. And she will rock it." And so you are not at all a failure. So that's that. No, let's kind of change gears and really get into this whole studying music in college. So first, let's talk about majoring in music. So what does it mean to be a music major? What types of classes should people be thinking about taking as a music major? Let's start with Eileen there.
Boy, that to me, it's all about listening to your heart, right? Because you love what you're good at and you're good at what you love. And if anything, having a bunch of different careers has taught me, it's actually all the things that I studied when I was younger in ways that I couldn't have possibly imagined then have made the possibility of the career that I'm blessed to have today possible. And so, if I think that if there are ways that you see the world that are distinct to you, that really speak to you as a person, your identity, the more that they resonate with you, the more you'll be inspired, the more that you'll bring that passion to your work. And it'll all combine in wonderful ways. I think one of the most important things that when folks are thinking about if they want to go on to college and in music is really to make the decision about whether they want to be in a conservatory and have that real focused type of training, or whether they want to be in a liberal arts college like Xavier, where Chancellor is. Do they want to be in an HBCU? Do they, what do they want to be in a large research institution? What type of context helps you thrive? And again, back to that, like, what helps you thrive? And I think it's not a particular advice that I could give, because I think the process of thinking about where you want to go to college is a process of thinking about you, of discernment, and where you think you're going to be the happiest. For me, I did my undergraduate at Eastman, and I realized after the first year that I hated it. Hated it in terms of only being just in music. Yeah. And when I then expanded and started to take business courses and have a business minor at the University of Rochester, I was much happier. And so for me, being in a research institution that had lots of different choices, lots of different ways I could explore, made me happy. But that's just me. And so I think really when you're thinking about music, first is just thinking about what you love, thinking about the context in which you thrive, and then really understanding that those just come together when you're deciding where you want to go when you're 18 years old. You do not have to be deciding for the rest of your life. You're really just trying to give yourself a good foundation and a place that's going to help you feel that you're in a receptive ecosystem that's going to speak to your heart, and where you feel that you'll have the colleagues and mentors that you need in order to really to understand what's at the center of why you're here in the world. What's your purpose? What's your gift? What's the unique distinctiveness that you want to hone and bring to the world?
I love that. It's so important. It kind of goes back to what you were talking about, Bill, with having that passion first. And then, when someone sees something in that passion, they can call that out and really continue to develop it. Chancellor, let's go on to you. And why don't you tell us a little bit about your life as a music major? What does it mean for you right now to be a music major?
So what it means for me a lot is knowing my strengths, knowing where I can help the other people in my class, and knowing where I need it. So I came into, the reason I chose Xavier in the first place, a lot in part because they have a really small, tight-knit community of musicians in their music program. The music ed freshman class is 9 people, and I'm super close with all of them. So what I love about it is that, so we're taking music theory classes, music history classes, exploring all of these different aspects, and all 9 people in my class came in with different strengths and different weaknesses that we are then able to play off of each other doing. So we're able to, if one person is really good at this thing, you're going to go to ask them for help, and then they will immediately be able to come back to you and say, hey, that's something I'm good at. Here's something I'm not. How can you help me there?
Yeah, I love that balance of like confidence and humility, right? Knowing what you're good at and being able to ask for help. And Bill, let's go to you. Talking about being a college music major and kind of what that looks like.
Okay, I want to speak to that, and don't let me forget, but I want to speak to something that Arlene mentioned. She mentioned the Eastman School of Music, and of course you went like this. Now, look at this in this context. You get a young man coming from the segregated South, never heard of a college conservatory of music, had no idea what that would be. Can you imagine going to Stillman College, where you encounter a professor, Dr. James Arthur Williams? He wasn't doctor at the time, but he engaged me. He taught me. He told me that if I wanted to go forward and do well in music, music had to dominate you. And he used as a standard the Eastman School of Music. I had never heard of the Eastman School of Music. What are you talking about? I've heard of Eastman Kodak because of the, that kind of thing. But he talked about the Eastman School of Music. There was a gentleman there named Julius Humes who actually taught voice, and he taught one of his former students that was from Columbia, South Carolina. That former student is now, well, she recently retired from the Cincinnati College Conservatory of Music. Her name was Mary Henderson Stuckey, where she taught voice. Yeah, so we had the same teacher. I had had him when I was just being introduced to music, and then of course he went on to teach her and get her to he got her to go to the Eastman School of Music and become a great singer and so forth. But then my music no my physics professor at Stillman College, she played in the Eastman Orchestra, and she was a violinist, but she taught physics at Stillman. So I'm looking at this music when it dominates you. If you're good in music, you can do so many other things, and it has to dominate you. So don't feel bad about changing careers. That's because you're so good, because of that artistry in you, Eileen. That's why you were able to get those jobs and things like that. So don't play that down lightly. It's great. Go on to now. Get me back on track, Jason.
We're talking about being a music major, right?
Being a music major, it has to dominate you. And then first and foremost, you really have to find out what it is about this art that you really like. Is it your singing? Is it your playing? And you really have to discipline yourself. You really have to discipline yourself and accept the fact and understand the fact that there are some courses that you're going to take that you may not like, but you have to get them. I appreciate having studied music history now in my old age, because when I hear music and so forth, I can go back to college and say, now, why didn't they tell me this then? But then I did not have the concept of it at that time. So right now, I'm thankful for everything I've gotten, but as a young person going into college, you're going to get so much stuff coming at you: music theory, music history, and then that performance component is, that comes along later. But those anchoring courses, and you have to take them seriously. The ear training, the sight singing, the solfege, all of those things that are going to come at you. It's like, oh, I can't stand this, I want to change my major. No, keep those things in the forefront, because that determines how far you go in the art, because that becomes your foundation.
Absolutely. I agree with that. I remember making my theory teacher cry because I realized when I was studying this Bach recit, and I just, I have a really great ear and I'm decent at sight singing, but sometimes Bach just takes weird turns that no one is expecting, right? And I said to my theory teacher, I didn't really know how to sing this until I analyzed it like harmonically. And he started to cry and say, oh my gosh, see, people do need this stuff, because like you were saying, Bill, like people want to just skip to performing on stage. And, there are these foundational things that really help with that.
Yeah.
So I think that can lead us into another question about kind of what kind of person comes to mind when you think of the ideal college music student. Because I think a lot of folks think that it doesn't take as much hard work as it does. But I can tell you that like sleep was not always didn't always happen as much as I would have liked for it to have happened. And even partying, we all joke about how lame Eastman parties were just because no one had time to party.
So
We didn't have time to plan a fun party. So thinking about the type of person that comes to mind, what qualities do they have? What skills do they have? And maybe think about your most successful students. And chancellors, since you don't have students yet, maybe think about the things that make you successful as a college music student. So let's start with you, Chancellor.
Yeah. So I would say the three most important things for a student going into music school is they're open and willing to collaborate. They are passionate about their specific aspect of music that they enjoy, and learning about others' aspects of music. And they're good at working out a schedule, and they enjoy being busy.
So true, so true. Eileen.
Gosh, so one of the many jobs I've had, I was the associate dean of the graduate school for many years at Syracuse University, and now being at UCLA. And so I probably have looked at, I don't know, tens of thousands of applications from folks over the years, and heard thousands of auditions. And I guess when I think about the students that are the most interesting, they're not the perfect ones. So we're not looking for perfection. I guess that it's, part of it is someone who just has that openness, that engagement and curiosity, that they're just willing. It's they're not, there's just this, you can't give someone curiosity. You can wish that they were a little more curious, but you can't give someone curiosity. And the energy that Chancellor just mentioned, right? I mean, you have to have that kind of discipline and energy. So someone who's just kind of sitting there, it's probably not going to be that engaging. But then there is an element of raw talent, especially when it comes to singing. There is, some people, it's true, just have a really beautiful voice. And that's a huge, and beauty is not always what we might aesthetically think of in a very conservative sense. It's not conscripted in that way. Beauty has a very expansive global openness to it. It's more of a distinctiveness that, like, it couldn't be anyone but Jason. Like, I hear your voice and I know it's you, right? It's not only the beauty of your voice, it's a distinctiveness to it, right? And so it's whether someone's a singer or an instrumentalist, that they somehow have a distinctive voice that in their own way is beautiful and captivating and really conveys a sense of their individuality. So I think it's all of those things, those kind of wrapped up, that really make for the ideal music student. I know that each and every one of them is different, and that's what makes a school.
Yeah, for sure. Did you want to jump in on that one, Bill?
Yeah, I have to go kind of scripturally, because you don't take a talent and hide it under a bushel. When you get to a place where that student comes in and you can see that that student has a passion for what they're doing, a really strong passion, that solves all of your problems right there. You don't have to worry about that student practicing because they're going to do it. You don't have to worry about that student having a bad attitude because they really want to do this. It's like their minds are open and ready for anything that you have to offer. I never will forget during my latter years at Central State University, I was looking for an accompanist for the choir, and the young man came and he started playing the piano because he wanted to audition for the choir, and he started playing and he was singing, and I just started crying, and I said that is so beautiful, it's so natural, and he said, well, why are you crying? He said, because I was just boo-hooing, and he wanted to know why I was crying, because it was so wonderful. And I said, you remind me of Everett Moore, a student that I had almost 20 years ago, and he played piano so beautifully. He said, Mr. Caldwell, that was my teacher. I didn't know that.
Wow.
But the young man was so sensitive, and in terms of what he was doing. So he came to college with this passion. And that's what you want to find in students. The students with the passion, the good attitudes, the parental support, all of those kinds of things are essential to them getting through. And that's what I've always looked, especially look for, and that person with a good attitude. Yes, sir, no, sir, yes, ma'am, and very respectful of, administration, that kind of thing, and people in authority. That's what I've always looked for.
Great. I think this kind of ties into this. So once this student gets into music school, what tends to be something that kind of throws them off or surprises them about what music school is, or what studying music at the collegiate level is? For me, it was actually a positive thing. It was like being at music camp and thinking, oh my gosh, I'm going to be at music camp for 4 years now, and it's going to be wonderful. And that was surprising to me. I wasn't really ready for that, for that level of feeling like I had so many people around me who had similar interests and passions. Eileen, what tends to throw folks off?
Well, Jason, just hearing your story, I was a first-gen college student too. So going to Eastman, I was very humiliated by my own lack of knowledge. I all of a sudden was in classes with, kids who've been playing in youth orchestras for 10 years, knew all the repertoire, and their parents, both of them, were different chairs in different orchestras. Oh yeah, my dad's the first chair in the New York Phil and mine's in this and that. I was just like, but I've never even heard any of these symphonies, and you've got them all memorized. And
Exactly.
so I think because I listen to all of us, we're hiring because it's someone is beautiful, hiring, we're meaning that we're saying like, come to school, right? That, because you're curious, because you're passionate, because you've got this talent, which means that Jason, and Chancellor, look, here we go, we can get in. But then we get in and we're so, oh wow, I don't know anything. And and that's okay, but I think that can, I'm speaking for myself, that really threw me. Because here I was, the little bright star of my little teeny tiny town where there were more cows than people, and then all of a sudden I go to Eastman and it's like, well, I am a very, very little fish and I know practically nothing. So I think just don't be embrace that, don't just look at this as like that just means that there's a lot to learn. But what great if you have that curiosity and you keep that stance, that rather than being self-critical, but just exciting, like, wow, I can get to learn all this stuff when I'm in this great place and I'm so blessed to be here and I'm just going to learn it. So I kind of letting that go and just diving in, that was really helpful to me. But so don't be intimidated.
Yes.
I have to piggyback on that because when I went to the University of Texas in Austin and going into the situation where all these people are already familiar with the art form, having studied voice and everything, I am, they had these incredible instruments and so forth. And they had, some of them had studied in Europe and their languages were flawless and everything. And I had this vocal repertoire coaching class that I had with David Garvey, who was the accompanist for Leontine Price, and he called me up to sing. And of course, my voice and timbre was fine, but my French diction was atrocious. And the students, everybody in class was ripping me to pieces and everything. But I knew I was supposed to be at the University of Texas because it was in my spirit. But I sang, and even though I sang with bad diction, some of the students came up afterwards and said, don't let those people try to kill your spirit. Continue to do what you're doing. Continue to go for it. Continue to work at it. And I did, and I came back the next week saying the same aria, and the class applauded. Then when I heard those students that were most critical sing, and I heard their instruments, and I went, and you were criticizing me, and you don't even have a good instrument, but your diction was good. But, their diction was flawless, but who would want to hear that kind of instrument that they had? So I'm thankful for that kind of support that the students, basically gave me, because, they saw that, but, they were tearing me a new one in so many words.
Right. There's a thing that happens. It really is. And I think we hear a lot about that, the critical kind of dog eat dog world of the music world. But the other side to that is this beautiful, supportive community, because at a certain point, we've all been there in terms of struggle, and those people who were criticizing you may have been, heavily criticizing their voice lesson because of what they were doing with the instrument. And we've all had that struggle, so we can all kind of build each other up, which is amazing. I think it's a wonderful community to be a part of. Chancellor, tell me about your big surprise this year.
My biggest surprise was how easy it is to get involved in so many things before you even know what's happening. My second semester, when we had to transition to online learning, at the time I was in 10 different ensembles, whether at college or around the city, and trying to manage all of that. And I was having so much fun because I was constantly doing what I wanted to be doing. And it was in high school and before high school, it was always, you had to seek out those opportunities to be like, where can I do this? Where can I get what I need, get my artistic outlet? And when you go to college, it's just like all of these things are here for you to try, and they're all wonderful.
Awesome. I love that there's also there's a positive sense to that question also, like you can be pleasantly surprised by it. and as well as being not so pleasantly surprised. It all happens, right? So now let's shift a little bit and think about students who are not majoring in music. So these are folks who are maybe like your physics professor who love physics, and I don't understand folks who can like be a physics professor and be in an Eastman orchestra. I just don't understand these types of folks, but I applaud them. I revere them. I don't get it. Let's go to Bill first. Tell me about maybe some of your students who were not music majors but participated in the music program, and how did that go?
Now, the reason that was able to handle, the reason that was able to happen was basically because of scholarships. But when I recruited, like for example, let's say if I recruited in Cincinnati and some of the schools, or I even recruited in Los Angeles and places like that, where I got to know the core directors and so forth. And they would tell me, well, you know, this young man, he does not want to major in music, but he enjoys singing. And then I would hear him sing, and he would sound like Pavarotti or somebody, you know, like, you know, and you go, my goodness. But the thing is, once they got to college, you know, because I was able to give them a scholarship, they sang, but they continued to major in their business. They continued to major in their English or, you know, whatever they were doing. And most of the time they were the, you know, the better performers because they did not have to be concerned about that other side, you know, the music history, the music theory, and all of those kinds of things, and all of the practicing and stuff. They just sang naturally. And I can kind of gauge this in my 34 years of instruction. I can say during the 1994-95, some of my best singers in my music department were non-music majors. They were the best students. And when I reach out to them now, they are your principals, they're your doctors, they're your lawyers and so forth, but they still have a passion for singing. And then of course their income is far greater than mine, you know, as I decided to stay in music.
Right, that is a thing. We just had a question come in that said, if I'm not a music major, will I be encouraged or welcome to sing in the university choir? And I think you just answered it. The answer is yes. Yeah. Eileen, talk a little bit about that, about non-majors.
Oh gosh, yes, come one, come all. It's just to really echo what Bill was saying. I mean, there are sometimes just the best students. You know, I would say part of it is just the intellectual diversity that they're bringing. They have just a different training if they're coming as a physicist or a business student or whatever, and that just adds to the richness. You know, at UCLA, we also have the world's largest, first actually ethnomusicology department. And so there's music from all around the world. And, you know, I'll go to anything from a mariachi band to an old time group. And very rarely do I find music students in those groups. They're from all over the university. And so they're actually at our very heart and soul. And the same for our music industry minor. Very few of them are music majors. You know, it's the business major who loves music, or the pre-law student who loves music. So they really are very, very much at the heart of what we do. And I love that mix, right? It's the mix of people who love music and who aren't majors. That, you know, kind of keep it from being too insular, that help us always remember that we're here to engage in the outside world and to try to make a difference.
Awesome. Yes, Bill.
I have to mention this because right there in Cincinnati where you are, one of the best African-American pianists that I know down there, his name is, and I'm gonna mention his name, is Eric Oliver. He went to the Oberlin Conservatory and he plays piano beautifully. But you know what? He decided that he wanted to be an attorney. And so he's a government attorney right there in Cincinnati. A good friend of mine also did a master's in piano from the Cincinnati College Conservatory of Music. And he decided that he was not making enough money as a pianist. So he decided to go to medical school. Now he's an anesthesiologist. So
and he's making some money now.
Yeah, if you are good in music, if there's something about being able to deal with that in terms of, that artistry. There's something about it that allows you to excel in other things. That's why it breaks my heart when people want to take music out of the schools and things like that. Music is the thing that pulls it all together, that keeps it focused, that calls you to want to go forward, because it teaches you to organize.
It does. I mean, Chancellor, it's like you were saying, you learn how to figure out a schedule really quickly. And even, I think about the very practical implications of what we're talking about for this very moment. We were joking, never in my life as a conductor, teacher, educator did I think I would need to read studies in epidemiology or be thinking about latency on platforms for, I just didn't know that I would need to be able to do that. So we need those folks who know about music and how it works, and who have the expertise in these other areas to support. So I think the answer is a big resounding yes. If you're not majoring in music, come on, join us, because you'll have a great experience. You'll enrich the college music experience for the music majors, and you'll also be very useful out in the world. Chance, we had a follow-up question. Of your 10 activities, of your 10 ensembles, if you had to pick your top 3, what are they?
Ooh, okay. The top 3 in no particular order are probably the barbershop quartet that I started with a few of my buddies, the SATB auditioned choir at Xavier Edgecliff Vocal Ensemble, and singing and playing bass guitar in 10 p.m. Mass in the 10 p.m. church group.
Awesome. Awesome.
They're all a whole lot of fun. They all allow me to connect with a bunch of people, and none of the stuff that Xavier does musically would be possible without those non-majors.
Yeah,
I've gotta say.
Exactly.
One of my roommates this year is a biology major, but he's also one of the most talented tenors that I know my age. He's instrumental in all of our choirs. He has just great voice.
Wonderful, wonderful. We also had a question to come in that said, what is ethnomusicology? Dr. Stremple, since you mentioned that, you want to take that?
Yeah, sure. So, in a certain most conservative sense, and here in this particular moment in time, I think it's actually a really interesting question, because the foundation of the field was really an antithesis. It was, there's white European art music, and then the rest of the globe. So in its founding origins, it was really studying music from around the world. And in a certain sense of kind of filling the big gap that traditional conservatories had, where we didn't have a focus on music that didn't have its European art origins at its very core. So it was the field has evolved. I would say that one of the most beautiful aspects is this kind of really rich contextualization of music within culture, within politics. So that if you're studying, for instance, the music of Persia, well, okay, you can even just look in Iranian. Well, now you've drawn a country border, but you also have race and ethnicity. You've got different spiritual branches of Islam, the Baha'i faith, the Jewish components, right? So it gets very complex very quickly. And so there's specialists in all different parts of the world, all different countries. So think of how large a continent Africa is. So we have specialists that think in regions and continents and very specific countries or musical traditions. And they'll, depending on their own interest, some of them have more of a focus on the culture of the music making and its context and history, and some of them bring more of a music focus, more traditional musicology focus. So there's kind of, it's an interesting field that in a certain sense it creates a new space in between anthropology and musicology with a focus on global music and culture. But it's really interesting. And especially in Los Angeles, it's such a global city. It's a perfect place to have an ethnomusicology program, because they do, a lot of ethnomusicologists do what's known as field work. So they'll go out and be part of a musical community to try to understand the music in its context. And there's so many different communities in Los Angeles, so it makes it a really interesting place to explore that field. But I think really broadly, it's just a wonderful way of understanding that your love of singing in the Cincinnati Boys Choir can open up all these different doors, all these different careers, all these different paths that you didn't even know existed. And it kind of comes back to one of the earlier points that my wonderful colleagues here were saying. You follow your passion, these other things will emerge, and so just stay with it.
Yeah, I love that. I'll do a quick plug for the next Boy Choir Banter. What is ethnomusicology is a great plug for that. Great way to plug that. Because actually the title of the next Boy Choir Banter conversation is What is Musicology? And I'll be talking with ethnomusicologist Tammy Kernodle and musicologist Steve Meyer. So we have an opportunity to explore that further, and I'm excited for it. Sorry, I keep looking. My phone is how I get the questions from the from the world, so that's why I keep looking at it. While we're kind of talking about specializations within the world of majoring in music, what are some of the other specializations? Chancellor, I know you're majoring in music education. Woo, woo. I'm very selfish, folks. Like I have to stand these things.
You're
that
charming.
are
charming. No, that is not the word. Charming.
You're kind. So what are some of the other specializations that people have when they major in music? Let's go to Eileen on this one.
Well, as I was sharing right before we went live, we're having a new speaker series in the fall at UCLA, and it's really, in a certain sense, to help expose our students to different options of different careers within the kind of larger industry of music. And so, it's really, okay, with that love of music, well, we'll have the head of Warner Records kicking off this series. So you can be in talent and acquisition. You could be an entertainment lawyer. We have forensic musicologists. So you think of the Blurred Lines case. So we have one of the lawyers who is one of the main folks involved there. Music supervision. So you think of all the shows that you like on Netflix, who's choosing the music and helping to set the stage and in a particular time frame with a particular feel, and using music to do that. Well, who chooses that? It's a music supervisor. Thinking about a musicology degree, thinking about someone who is an entertainment lawyer, all of these different possibilities, sound engineering, composition, film scoring, film composition. So it just opens up. And so it's really a way of helping us all keep in mind that to have that base in music, that knowledge base, it can lattice and platform onto so many different career paths. And some of them, I have to say, with Troy Carter, who is going to be one of the folks joining us, one of the founders of Spotify, some of those careers don't even exist yet, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, that's and really back, and Bill, I think it was you, was just so beautiful in stating, that gift of being able to be a consummate musician allows you to excel in a variety of fields. And I think it really is that you were talking about your French diction, Bill, in class, and it's that attention to detail with your e vowel versus and your schwa, and this it's that precision, that attention to detail, but with that artistic sweep and your ability to integrate it all and make this and to really make a performance come together with an artistic vision. And a lot of people don't have creative artistic vision. So if you've got that creativity, that intelligence, that drive, that curiosity, that passion, and that ability to hone in with detail and have a vision, that's an executive. I don't know what you're going to be an executive in, but boy, just like Jason here, you're going to be running the show.
And so you were talking about the the opportunities for specializing in different fields at kind of a larger conservatory within a university. But I want to get the view from Chancellor, who's at a liberal arts college, and from Bill with the HBCU, with one HBCU perspective. So Chancellor, what's available for folks at Xavier?
Xavier, so you have your education majors, your performance majors. We have a really small music production program that's slowly growing that we're super excited about. And really from there, you can specialize in an even smaller, more specific thing. Like, I don't know.
It's all good.
I can't think of examples, but
it's all good. Yeah, this is about giving the overview, so that's plenty.
Yeah.
Bill, tell me about kind of at Central State and beyond. What opportunities or what specializations could folks have at your institution?
Well, you have to look at the fact that I did come out of historic institution, Central State University. I have on my wall right here that I can look at a picture of Leontine Price, who came out of that institution. So she went on to be one of the greatest, sopranos of all time. Then a number of opera singers of internationally renowned have come through that. But then you had Frank Foster, outstanding in jazz and so forth. Now this was, you're talking about a school that was founded like in 1887. So that's its long history. What I experienced over the past 34 years, though, a lot of young people would come in and they're majoring in music and so forth. And the careers that they would end up going into with teacher education, music education. And a lot of them would get that jazz studies component that we offered at Central State at the time, and they would hone in on that. But most of them now, when I see them, like, if there's Sundays, there's shows on TV. There was a show with Kelly Clarkson, whatever, and I look at her background singers, and I said, I taught that young man. He sang in my choir, that kind of thing. Or you see somebody backup singers for big name artists that sang in your choral groups and so forth, or even majored in voice, and they majored in voice to get the discipline. They majored in voice to get the technique, and they majored in voice to get a degree because they couldn't see themselves getting a degree in anything else. But the beauty of the whole thing is once they got the degree, they made it work for them. Like, for example, they can go in and read the charts and things that are behind these backup singers, as far as these backup singers and so forth. People will send them the music and say, here's the chart. Can you learn this and be ready to record by such a time? And they are on it, because of that theory, that history, and so forth. So the careers are out there to go forward if you are good. If you are good. Now, you don't have to be the best. You just be good. Because if you strive to be the best, you're going to have a problem. But just be good at what you're doing, and people will find you.
Yeah,
people will find you because I 7 years ago I retired, and so I'm not going to do anything else. But then,
did you really say that? I found that hard to believe.
But the Cleveland Orchestra came knocking on my door. Oh, Bill, you finally retired from Central State. Now, come on up here. Let's do this. And the same thing with Cincinnati. Oh, you don't have to be concerned about that. Come on down. And then, of course, things just open up around the country. I was out in California two summers ago and just had a wonderful time out there working with a group, that African-American choral group out there. Just great. And being able to travel now. And so... Put it this way, just be good at what you do. Like I said, you don't have to be the best because people will find you if they want you. Yeah.
So true, so true. And I think one of the, I think it's easy to get hung up on what you major in. And, it is an important decision, but that doesn't define what you will do, because the world just opens up in ways that, you never know. So let's think about our pre-college students who are wanting to major in music or wanting to participate in music at the collegiate level. What type of preparation do they need? This was one of my questions, but it was also one of my mom's questions, who did not use YouTube. She texted me. I said, what is happening?
I love your mom.
I do too. I do too. So what are the things that high school students now can do to be prepared for the collegiate music experience? Chance, let's actually start with you. What do you feel was the best thing to prepare you?
The best thing that got me prepared for majoring in music in high school was just doing as much music as I can, no matter where I could find it. Being a part of it as much as I can, so I'm already there when I go to college, and I'm ready to just jump right in. Learning some theory, practicing your sight reading, training your ear, all that kind of stuff, and just doing music whenever you possibly can.
I love that answer. I really love that answer, doing music. Bill, let's go to you.
If you're going to go to college and major in music, think about the piano. First and foremost, you need that skill. You need to be able to do that. You need to be able to sit down and play, and read, and then try to do things as far as ear tunes and so forth. Being able to know where 1, 4, 5, 7 is in every key, and then you can fake it.
Yes, you can.
On a lot of things. But you need that skill. You need some dexterity, a keyboard background, and being able to sight read as well.
Right. And
those are the ones you focus on.
Well,
Eileen.
I really don't have too much to add to Chancellor and Bill on that one, but the one thing I would say is that we're also looking for commitment. So rather than trying to spread yourself too thin, if you're with the Cincinnati Boys Choir, we want to see that you've been there for 7 years, 5 years. Like, we are looking for that deep knowledge, those deep connections, that deep commitment that is sustained over time. So rather than doing 1 year of this and a year of that over here and kind of, looking a little scattered, whatever you love, dig deep in that one. And that also is going to show us that you have a level of commitment, and your parents and family are there supporting you through that commitment. And we understand that ability to make a long-term commitment to the Cincinnati Boys Choir as, you're going to be able to make a commitment to the institution for college, and you'll do it, you'll get through, you'll graduate. And we want to choose folks who are going to be successful. And so that's also just a way of demonstrating that, through thick and thin, because not everything's always easy, right? Not every boys choir rehearsal you come home and go like, yeah, I nailed it again tonight. Yeah. First time out, right? That we understand that you figured out, life has highs and lows, but you can get through it, and you did. So I would also just to add to the lovely and perfect comments of my compatriots here, I would just add commitment.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, so now it's story time. I love this. When I was teaching, especially elementary school, I would say, it's story time with Mr. Holmes, and I did it in a really silly voice that I won't do here. But so I just want to hear about a special memory from your time of studying music in college. And Chancellor, you have an unfair advantage because you're doing it now. But, and I will start to give you some time to think. I remember we used to call them informally musical theater nights. And this was back when Eastman was still pretty classically focused. Every now and again, they might do a Sweeney Todd, right? And that was as far into musical theater as they would kind of dip their toe. But so a bunch of my friends and I that was what we done in high school, right? We were in musicals, we were, musical nerds, right? And so we would go, I would often sit at the piano, sometimes somebody else would, and we would just play and sing, and it was informal. And, there was this added sense of created drama. We thought that if our voice teachers heard us belting and screaming that they would be angry. I don't think they would have, but we created that drama to keep it interesting. And that's, I still remember those nights. I'm still close with some of those folks. In fact, if you were watching the first Boy Choir Banter, Bernard Holcomb and Brian Giebler, we were both in college at the same time, and they are having fabulous careers as tenors right now. And we both of us, had those musical theater nights where we would just get together informally and sing and kind of enjoy this community. So are there other special memories that you have from your college music time? Bill, go for it.
Yeah. I have to, because I talked about the fact that I had problems with the languages and so forth when I started grad school and so forth. But I can remember singing in a master class for Gerard Souzet and Donald Graham. Donald Graham, of course, sang at the Metropolitan Opera, and of course, Souzet, you hit all these recordings. And I sang Boychoir for him. And he looked at me and he went, perfect. And I felt so honored. I mean, I got kind of teary-eyed. And then I sang a cycle by Jean Berger called Carolina Cabins. And I sang that for Donald Graham. And I got pretty much the same kind of response. So I felt really good saying, you laughed at me my first, during my first class, but look at who I'm singing for now and getting these wonderful accolades. And those moments have always stuck with me. But I had to work. I really had to work to catch up, and it paid off. Yeah.
I love that. Eileen.
So I'll actually share one from, I was working on my doctorate, and I decided to do my topic on a French woman composer, and I had never had a class in women composers. They were not included as part of the canon. And I had one person that I was thinking of on my committee saying, "You're not going to do a dissertation on one of those composers no one's ever heard of, are you?" And I was kind of like, well, I kind of want to. So long story short, I ended up getting about halfway through my dissertation, and it was on a French woman composer, and I realized, but I'm an American girl. Why am I writing about a French composer? I really should do something closer to my own identity. And my dissertation advisor, Austin Caswell, said, well, Eileen, you've gone too far. But do not let the pursuit of perfection keep you enjoying for damn good. And you just keep on, finish this one, and then you can write about all and sing all the American art songs and contemporary music that you want. So it was also just, being able to understand perfection's not the pursuit, right? It's the process, it's the learning, it's the getting closer and closer and closer to the heart of what you want to do. And it was just a long journey of trying to figure out slowly where I was supposed to be and where that was for me. And so just kind of knowing that that's okay at every step of the process, even as I'm, it's pretty far along in finishing my dissertation before it kind of finally slowly hit me. I was not always, it just took me a while, but I just want to just share that because it is part of really understanding your own reason for being and what you're supposed to try to give back and what your own calling is, not to be too hokey about it.
Wonderful, wonderful. And Chancellor.
Yeah, so one of my most special memories so far in college has been, there was this one night we had just been given a project in my Theory 2 class where we had to write a piece themed about the environment and set it to images.
Ooh, nice.
So it just so happened that the entire class decided on this one night that they were going to go in and work on their project. So we all ended up in the theory lab at like 10 p.m., just joking with each other, listening to music, working on these projects, just having a lot of fun.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Well, thank you. Yeah, exactly. Thank you to all three of you for this conversation. I hope it's been helpful to you who are watching. I know it's been helpful and just good for my heart to just kind of sit down and chat about studying this art form that we love so much. And as you were saying, Bill, it really has to dominate you, and it does in a really beautiful way. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
the wonder and I'll just kind of leave our audience with this. I think one of the wonderful things about studying music is that if you let it, it'll be there for you. Like you put your time in, and you know it can
Yes.
totally be there to sustain you as well. And these lessons that we learn through the process of learning of being in music. Before we go, I do have to call out Chancellor. I love that you have the Boy Choir history book right behind
Yes,
you.
I was getting ready to comment on that. I saw that.
Yes.
I sure did.
Love it. Now, is that planned or is that always there?
No, that's
Always
usually
there.
on that shelf.
Oh, awesome. I love it.
Yes, when I
Even
saw
better.
it, I said, I know that book. I know that book. Yeah.
Yes.
Aw.
That book was very helpful for me this year in terms of understanding what the Cincinnati Boy Choir is. What is this thing that I've gotten into? So thank you, Bill. Thank you, Chancellor. Thank you, Eileen. You can't see her. She's behind the scenes. Thank you, Katie. Katie McDonald is the executive director of the Cincinnati Boy Choir and was feeding me the questions from YouTube. Thank you, audience, for watching. Be sure to join next time for Boy Choir Banter. It's on July 23rd with Dr. Tammy Kernodle and Dr. Steve Meyer, and it's called What is Musicology? I look forward to seeing you there. See you guys the next time.
Thank you. Thank you,
Jason.
Jason.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Cincinnati Boys Choir.
Pleasure meeting everybody.
Yes.